And call the June 8th Toastmasters meeting to order. Do we have a flag tonight?
We do, Mr. President. If everyone would kindly mute themselves. Oh, I need to have host disabled participant screen sharing. Okay, here we go. If everyone will repeat after me, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
Thank you, Rob.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Rob. Welcome, everybody, to the June 8th Toastmasters meeting. This is the shared meeting between Cascade Speakeasy and Electric Toasters. I have to admit that every one of these meetings that passes by from week to week, I think they're just getting better and better. I know I'm, for one, I'm getting used to them. And it's nice to see that I think just about all of our electric toasters now are, with the exception of one, are joining up for these Monday evening meetings. At this point, I'd like to turn the meeting over to our Toastmaster. Tonight's Toastmaster is Eric.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight's theme is summertime, and the living is easy, question mark. So probably the word of the day is facetious. We have no changes. Well, we do have changes. I'm going to be the Toastmaster, and Joyce will be the grammarian this evening. And our general evaluator is Pat Whitfield. Pat, what are you going to do as general evaluator?
Well, I'm just going to take an overview of the whole experience and give you feedback afterwards. And I have a very talented and dedicated team to help. So evaluator number one is Ron. Ron, can you tell us a bit about, sure, what am I trying to say here? About Lloyd's speech.
Well, I can tell you very little about it. Hopefully Lloyd will tell us a whole lot more about his speech. I will be evaluating Lloyd's speech. Lloyd is going to be speaking on researching and presenting, and the purpose of this project is to learn or review basic research methods and present a well-organized, well-researched speech on any topic. The speech length is 5 to 7 minutes. Back to you.
Thank you, Ron, very much. Our timer tonight is Rob. Rob, can you give us information about the various times for the various speeches, please?
Yes, I can, Ms. General Evaluator. My role as timekeeper is to make sure that everyone is attempting to communicate their desired message within allotted time. This evening, Lloyd will be doing a 5 to 7 minute speech. At 5 minutes, I will provide him with the green card. At 6 minutes, with the yellow card. And at 7 minutes with the red card. When we do table topics, I will also be timing those. At 1 minute, I will present the green card. At 1.5 minutes, the yellow card. And at 2 minutes, the red card. And I will report back at the end of the meeting, Ms. General Evaluator.
Thank you very much. And I love those cards. They're so much less boring than just plain old cards. And besides, it's nearly dinner time, so it's food, something to think about. All right. The next individual who is going to share their expertise with us is going to be Joyce. Joyce will be our grammarian this evening.
So I want to make sure that I am not muted, am I?
No.
I've had a bad record of talking. Hello. You know how I am. enough with about me. Let's talk about the word of the day. I spent many hours of research. 20 seconds. And the word of the day is jury rig. Much what I did to find this word, to assemble quickly or from whatever is at hand, in my case, Google, especially for temporary use, to jury rig stage lights using automobile lights. That is the word of the day.
Thank you very much. Last but not least in this evaluation team is Christina Stepper, who will be our awe counter for this evening.
Thank you, Pat. I have the awe counter log in front of me. I find it most effective personally to pay attention to the log rather than to look at the person who is speaking. Please excuse me if my eyes are down when you are speaking. It's because I'm listening intently. If I look at people when they're speaking, I tend to get into the speech instead of listening for filler words. I will be listening for filler words such as the improper use of and well and so when it comes to beginning a sentence with those words. Like, you know, repetitions, and any other anomalies that come up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That completes the evaluation team, and I'm turning it back to our Toastmaster, Eric.
Thank you, Ms. General Evaluator. Joyce, will you please spell the word of the day?
Sure. It has a hyphen now. Jury hyphen RIG.
Just like it sounds.
And what I will do is put rename. So instead of my name, I will put jury rig.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. All right, kid. Remember the word of the day, jury rig, and all of your various speaking duties. We have a speech tonight from Lloyd. There are situations that no one ever wants to get into. There's too much at stake and they're so stressful that you don't think you can possibly handle them. But somehow you do, though often not very well. This evening for the Level 1 project, Researching and Presenting, Lloyd Smith will describe one of those situations, one that happens to Americans about 500,000 times a day, 183 million times a year, and that he experienced 11 times from early in the fall of 2016 to late in the spring of 2019. At least 1/3 of those 500,000 people do not handle the situation well at all. Lloyd will describe what happens and offer some simple hints about how to make sure that if you find yourself in that situation, you handle it as well as possible. Lloyd Smith and his speech, 9/11. Please welcome Lloyd Smith.
Thank you, Eric. As Eric said, I have some experience with the problem of calling 911. Maybe some of you have as well, but I did it 11 times in a relatively short period of time. That's because my wife Laverne had a progressive neurological condition that eventually killed her. But when she was alive, it led to a lot of falls and infections, which were debilitating. And there were times when I had to call 911. There was no choice. The interesting thing about 911 is that we take it entirely for granted, but it's a relatively new thing in the United States. And as Eric mentioned in his introduction, there are 500,000 911 calls made every day in this country. Here in the Wenatchee area, or the Wenatchee Valley, we are very, very lucky to have an organization called Rivercom. That's actually not a government agency. It's a government corporation, which is legally different. It oversees the emergency call system for 23 separate fire and police agencies all over Chelan and Douglas counties. It's all of them in Chelan and Douglas counties. There are only 40 full-time employees, and that includes everybody, administrators, IT people, technicians, and everybody. So it's a relatively small core of people who actually answer the phones. And they are under a lot of stress. But the thing is, everybody who ever has to call 911 is also under a lot of stress because, after all, it's an emergency line. What I'd like to talk about right now is what a 911 call is like and how you ought to do it in order to get the maximum benefit, the quickest response and the best response from it. Because depending on how you act when you're making a 911 call, you may or may not get the result you think that you want to get. First of all, if it's a fire or some sort of criminal activity, the thing you have to do is to get away from the situation as rapidly as possible. Leave the house or hide from the bad guys or whatever it takes to get away, and then make your 911 call. The person on the phone will tell you what you ought to do at that point. Let's assume we're talking here about medical type emergencies, which is the experience I have. The number one thing is that you have to stay calm and be concise. Now, that's a bigger challenge than you think if a loved one is laying on the floor or having trouble breathing or something like that. But you have to. If you're yelling and hollering and whatnot on the phone, the 911 operator can't figure out what you need. And they spend a lot of time trying to calm you down, which you don't want. When you dial 911, usually the call's answered very, very quickly, 1 or 2 rings of the phone. And the first things you will hear is 911, what is the address of your emergency? Now you might think, who cares? Well, they care because they have to send somebody to the address where the emergency is. It's true that they have caller ID, but caller ID does not automatically give you an address. It just gives you usually a city, and sometimes not anything at all, depending on, say if it's a cell phone, for example, you may or may not get caller ID response. So they'll ask for the address. You'd be surprised how easy it is to suddenly realize you don't know your address when you're under a lot of stress. That's why lots of people who have to make 911 calls repeatedly end up writing their address down and taping it to the phone so that they know what to say. You don't want to get that wrong because that's where the ambulance or the fire truck or whatever is going to go, because you've asked for it. Right after you give the address, the operator will say, what's happening there? And that's when they need a very concise and clear description of what the emergency is. They don't want to hear, it's my wife, she can't, she's got big trouble, because then they'll have to spend time calming you down to try to find out what's going on. So they need, in the smallest number of words possible, what the situation is. Right after that, you'll hear the next question, is she breathing? Now, they use what they call a decision tree. In other words, whatever answer you give, that leads to the next answer or the next question down the line. So is she breathing? If the answer is yes, obviously, then that's not a big issue. If the answer is no, then you'll start getting material about administering CPR or something like that. The following question is she conscious? Because that makes a difference too in what they tell you. Next, is she bleeding? That makes a big difference too, because if you say yes, then you get first aid instructions on how to stop bleeding. If you say no, then they move on. Somewhere in that set of questions, they will say, my partner has sent help, which is to reassure you that somebody's on their way to your address. And the final thing they'll say is, what is your phone number? Now that strikes everybody as an odd question, but remember, you may not be calling from the phone that's actually at the point of the emergency. In other words, it could be a cell phone that you've picked up that belongs to somebody else, that kind of thing. And then if something technical goes wrong with the phone connection, they want to be able to call you back, obviously. They'll tell you, don't hang up, or hang up sometimes. It depends on how busy the system is. Now that'll provoke a response. In a very short time, you're going to get a fire truck, a fire aid car, an ambulance, or all of them. And there will be between 2 and 10 people tromping into your house. That's a kind of a big deal. Before they get there, if it's nighttime, be sure you turn on the lights so they can find your house, that the outside address is illuminated. Unlock the door. You'd be surprised how often it is to forget that little detail. Clear obstacles out of the way. The main thing is when they're in there, you've got to keep quiet until they ask you a question. They don't want to hear a bunch of yelling and hollering or, trying to throw yourself onto your loved one's, bedside or whatever. You'll have to answer all the questions again. Be sure to have a complete medication list. If this is somebody who's had a bunch of 911 calls, if you're on my chart with Confluence, you can get a medication list printed up, and that's the best thing to do. And above all, stay calm and concise. If they have to transport the person to the hospital, be sure you grab all of the ID and insurance cards on your way out the door, because they'll ask for that information at the hospital. You're going to have to answer all of the questions again from the nurses and doctors in the ER. And then you're going to have to get used to waiting, typically 2 to 5 hours, depending on when your person went in. Saturday nights, trust me on this, are not good nights to have a run to the ER. That's where you get the 5-hour waits. But you'll be entertained by junkies screaming and little kids hollering and whatnot the whole time. Finally, the point of this is to try to get what you want. And that's why you have to be calm. You have to think a little bit and do your best. It's not going to be fun, and it's not going to be cheap if you have an ambulance ride to the hospital. Mr. Toastmaster.
Lloyd, timer, can you give us 1 minute, please?
1 minute.
Please give Lloyd your thoughts, and you can type them in the chat room there.
That is 1 minute.
Thank you, Rob. Let's wrap up those comments. I always thought it was jerry-rigged for the longest time. My dad had a friend named Jerry, and he was always putting his truck back together with baling wire, and you had to turn a flathead screwdriver to start it. So for the longest time, I always thought it was in honor of him. Now it's time for table topics. And to conduct table topics will be Ian. Please welcome Ian.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. I didn't look closely enough at the schedule tonight, so I didn't realize that I was going to be the table topics master until 5 minutes before the evening started. So I've been madly trying to jerry-rig some questions together for the group. My first question is, well, let me restate that. Back in the winter of 1996 and 1997, there was a song that I remember listening to when I worked at Stevens Pass ski area. That was by a band named Sublime. And Sublime had a song, and the lyrics said, "Summertime and the living's easy." It's exactly what our topic is tonight. My question, Vicki, summertime, is the living really easier?
Vicki had to leave.
No, I'm here.
We are, okay, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, for me, summertime is a lot easier. I don't have to work as much. It's my favorite time of the year. You can go out, hang out with friends and family, enjoy time, spend time in water. I really find that summertime, my life just calms down, and I'm able to just have time to reflect and time for myself. Travel is so much easier. You don't have to worry about the passes, if there's going to be snow, if it's going to take longer. the summertime, I'm just able to plan and just know that things are going to work out the way that I want them to. And my birthday's in the summer, so it's a time for celebration, and I love it. So yes, summertime is definitely living in the easy. Mr. Table Topics Master. You're muted.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm gonna have to go through all that again. This question was for Jackie. And Jackie, I noticed tonight that the theme was marked with a question mark at the end. Is the summertime easier for you or the winter easier for you? Or is there a different season that marks the easiest time of the year for you?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Actually, summer is not my favorite time of year. And it's because I've been a piano teacher for 20 years. And summer is always financially tougher because I am not as good about allocating money for the summer, during the summer. And students go out of town and I am typically not working as much, so I don't have as much income. My birthday is also in the summer. Next week, and I'll be a little older than 24. Thank you, Rob, for that. So I like it for that reason, but typically my favorite season is fall. It just has this bustle about it. New things, new starts, new students. I love the fall foliage, so fall would be it for me. And by the way, it's not only Sublime that has Summertime and Living is Easy, it's from Porgy and Bess as well. I almost want to sing a little bit of it. A couple seconds. Summertime and the living is easy. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you. That was awesome. Summertime for me, it's definitely not as easy as wintertime. In summertime, I find myself working on all kinds of projects that have been built up, stacked up over the winter. One of the things that I'm dealing with right now is an irrigation system. I'm new to this home. I moved into this current home back in November. And now that it's gotten hot, the grass is getting drier. And when I bought the house, the previous owner was going through the irrigation system with me. And he said that sometimes the pump kicks off and when you open this panel, all you have to do is push this little wire and the pump will start. So I thought to myself, that's not how it's supposed to work, but I'll figure out how to fix it after I buy the house. I figured that it was just going to be a loose wire and I tightened up the wires. It seemed to work for a little while, but pretty soon that gremlin reared its ugly head again. And I ended up calling the manufacturer of the irrigation module. Unfortunately, the unit was 17 years old and the manufacturer had me troubleshoot some stuff and I found out that it was bad. I also found out how many things this previous owner had jerry-rigged into this irrigation system, and I'm now also replacing the pump and the electric motor that goes along with that pump and quite a bit of PVC plumbing and even some electrical wiring that goes along with this irrigation system. Not what I was hoping to do right now as my grass is getting browner by the day. Ron, I'd like to know, what is the nastiest jerry-rigged thing you've ever run across that you had to resolve?
I don't know. I'm not having anything come to mind on something that's really bad I've had to resolve. I suppose there's been several things, but nothing jumps out any more than the rest. I have to admit, I was sitting here thinking about the irrigation system that I inherited as you were describing yours. I have an irrigation timer that was old when I moved in here 18 years ago, but it's still working. The thing just won't quit. The irrigation system itself has been pretty good to me. The original installer back in the 70s did a good job, and I've cobbled onto it some over the years, but for the most part, I don't spend a whole lot of time each year putting irrigation into service. It's been just fun. One thing with this particular house, after we moved in and we had the standard garage with 2 garage doors and 2 full-size cars, and had to fold the mirrors in on the cars to get through the garage doors. I didn't really care for that a whole lot. So I got to looking at it, and there was enough room there to replace the 2 doors with 1 door if we put a large beam in place. And what I'm about to describe, I can't say I can blame on the previous owner of the house, but certainly the home builder. It makes me wonder whether there was any code or any building department for that matter, but just the way that the beam went across that door, and it was a load-bearing wall, but there was nothing really for it to bear on either side. It made me think back to that big snowstorm that we had in 96 or 97. I don't know how that whole garage didn't fall down, because that load-bearing wall really wasn't load-bearing except for just a little bit in the middle on the sides. On either sides of those doors, there was nothing there. But we were able to fix it and certainly make it a heck of a lot better than it was ever intended. And my garage hasn't fallen down. And I still had a pretty good use for that beam that we took out and moved over to the side and put a carport on the house. And that's where I get to park now. Really not a jury-rigged carport, with the exception of maybe the paint that I have to clean up a little bit. And like Ian, you mentioned, summer isn't necessarily as good as winter because all of those crazy projects that come to bear, painting being one of them. But hey, we'll get through it. Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, Ron. Patricia, summertime and the living's easy. What's so tough about living in the winter?
That's an interesting thing to ask someone who used to live in Mammoth Lakes, California, and Park City, Utah, where you got many, many feet of snow, and spent some time as the public information officer of the U.S. ski team. So I have seen serious snow, even more serious than you've seen here in Wenatchee. However, I was not the person responsible for shoveling the snow. So the thing I like least about winter is snow in my driveway. I have no one to shovel the snow, but I have a big wide snow shovel and I can push it to the sides very efficiently. However, if you'll remember the winter before last, we had so much snow that I could pile the snow up on either side of the driveway, and it got so high, I wasn't tall enough to shovel it up there. But then a miracle happened. This lovely family moved in across the street, and when I would be getting ready to go to the college to teach my 8 o'clock class, at 7 is when I would leave, I'd go out and find that my driveway was shoveled. Regretfully, they have moved. So I don't know what miracle is going to happen next winter, but I hope it won't be jury-rigged. Shoveling snow is not my thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob, there's a lot of places that just don't have a winter like we have around here. There's no shoveling snow. So it really is summertime any easier than winter in those places? Think Southern California.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Well, I'd rather not take Southern California. However, I will take Southern Arizona, where I grew up as a kid. And I remember one year we actually got 1 day of snow. It was like a miracle. And we played in that snow all day long, and the next day it was gone, and we never saw it again. And we so thoroughly enjoyed that until we did actually move up to Washington State, particularly Waterville, where you get even more snow than you do here in the valley. And we enjoyed it. We enjoyed the skiing. However, like Pat, we didn't enjoy the shoveling. So there, you have to take the good with the bad. And to live in an area like Wenatchee, it is so nice to live in an area where we don't have all of the bad things that are happening around the country right now. I so appreciate the small town living, the fact that people do protest without looting and rioting and killing and harming people. I'm okay with that. Unfortunately, in this day and age, when people mention protests to me, the first thing I think of is rioting and looting, and that's unfortunate. I don't know how I got off on that tangent after talking about snow and warm weather, so I think I'll stop there, Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thanks, Rob. That was great. Lloyd, in 1994, I bought my first car. It was a 1968 Chevelle, and I paid $500 for it. Or rather, my dad paid $500 for it. And then since then, I think I've paid him $50 back on that tab. Every once in a while, he reminds me about that. To get that car home, I literally had to jerry-rig the car with baling wire and duct tape. The exhaust was hanging on the ground when I found it. I baling wired that up around the frame where the exhaust brackets had broken, rusted off actually is what had really happened. And the gas line between the gas tank and the initial part of the hard line clear in the back of the car was sucking air because the rubber line had rotted through so badly. So I wrapped duct tape around the gas line and sealed the holes. I drove the car like that with baling wire and duct tape for well into the fall and into the beginning of winter when I parked the car for the winter because it was a horrible winter car. Tell us about a time that you jerry-rigged some sort of an auto repair on a car in your lifetime.
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master. I think, well, typically I didn't have to do it to any of my cars, but my little brother bought a early 60s VW Beetle when he was in high school. And I don't know if you've ever, the more modern Beetles were actually pretty nice cars. I mean, noisy, but nice. But those early 60s Beetles had the look and feel of being made out of, pop cans that had been smashed flat. And they were not engineered for any kind of safety at all. And so one of the numerous previous owners of that car had somehow decided that it needed to be more safe, so he installed seat belts. But he installed the positive click kind, not that don't have the button that releases, but they twist in, kind of like a what do they call that, a frog clip or whatever on clothing. Well, one result of that is if you ever ended up upside down, it would be literally impossible to unhook the seatbelt. And so you'd probably die quickly in the fire, it being a very small car, and be consumed quickly. But so one day my brother was trying to figure out what to do about that. So I went out to my dad's shop and got his pair of tin snips and just cut those seat belts off. And so that's probably the best jury rig that I ever had to do with a car. Table Topics Master.
Lloyd? Joyce, I mentioned a song that makes me think of summer by Sublime, and Jackie added in another one that I wasn't aware of. What song do you think of when you think summertime, and why?
I don't think of a song. I think of sounds, such as, of course, don't get me wrong, I love music, but when I was growing up, summertime meant harvest time, which meant you would wake up, as I would say, to crack the dawn, and you would go to work in the field. And so the sounds that I incorporate with summer is the sound of tractors. When I got old enough to work in the warehouse, the sound of the machinery. When I got to a certain point in my life where I started doing office work, it was pretty much the sound of the coffee maker where you're waiting for your first fix of the morning, and there was usually a line. This is before Starbucks. I have to say my favorite summer sound is when I come home from work and I open up my doors and I listen to the sound of the birds, and it's peaceful. And then when the crickets join in their reply, that is the sound of summer for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric, I'd like to know about your first summer job. When was it and what was it?
I wanted to make money in the worst way. And I was only 15. So I asked my mother what I could do. And she said, well, you got to be 16. I said, no, there's got to be something I can do. She found out that I could pick cherries. I never picked cherries. I think she had trepidation about putting me in the orchard by myself at 15. But she found an orchard, actually it was Cusick's orchard across from the rack. And it's no longer there, of course. But she took me there to the orchard, and I mean, it was dark hunted. It was like Joyce, like, you know, just barely getting light. And it was cold, and there was dew on the ground, and I had a big old lunch with me, and totally unfamiliar surroundings. And I went in, and a couple of the old boys took me under their wing and showed me how to do it and how to get you don't just pick them like this. You get a branch under your arm and you just get right on the nubs there and just crack them right into your pail. And so I get there at 5, and so about 11 o'clock, a couple of these old boys roll in with hangovers. I mean, they were like, you know, probably down from the rails. And they had these huge trees back then. It's not like it's sculpted now. And they set that ladder 3 times and just picked that thing. Pretty soon, all of a sudden, you look around there's 12 boxes of apples of cherries down there. They knew how to do it. And so they taught me how to do it. And they took me under their wing and set the ladders for me and let me have all the low-hanging fruit. And it was just a wonderful experience. And made money to boot. My first job, I'll never forget that. Thank you, Thomas Everett's master.
Thanks, Eric. I actually just experienced my first opportunity to pick fruit this weekend. This house that we moved into has 3 apple trees, and it was time to thin out the fruit. It was a lot more work than I expected it to be. Although I did find it pretty relaxing, I did definitely decide that was not a career opportunity that I was going to pursue anytime soon. Kathleen, do you have any plans for the summer? And how might COVID-19 impact those?
Thank you, Ian. I thought I was going to have to jury rig the Zoom meeting to get you to pick me. Summer plans. I've been thinking more about some summers that I've had in the past. Eric's presentation reminded me of summers that we spent in Oakland, California. So I'm going to share that with you. My husband and I, Steve, lived in Oakland, California, BK, so before kids. We had our little love nest on Canyon Avenue in Oakland off of Fruitvale, which was at that time a pretty crummy neighborhood. It was our second home, I think. But every weekend when you live in Oakland, California or the San Francisco Bay Area, you can escape. And every weekend in the summer, we would escape up to the mountains. We would take backpacks. We would go in for just one night, because then we could carry wine and pasta, pasta sauce, and all of the other important things. And on one of those trips, I caught my first fish, a trout, which came up out of the water, and I didn't know what to do with it. And you should have seen me banging, trying to hit it on the head. Because I read that's what you were supposed to do to kill a fish. Eventually, the poor fish expired and did turn out to be a really great dinner. I'm hoping for a summer just like that this year. Thank you, Ian.
That was awesome. Christina, I think you're the last one on the list that hasn't spoken yet. in the summertime, Wenatchee has something about it, and I don't live in Wenatchee, I live up in Leavenworth, but Wenatchee has something in the atmosphere, something just ambient about it that reminds me of summer. I don't know if it's a smell or a combination of the smell and the temperature and the sound, but when I'm in Wenatchee in the evening as the sun's setting, it just is summer to me in that warm heat. Is there anything that just, when you think summertime, is there any attributes that just really have to be there for summertime to be in full effect? And if so, what are they?
Thank you, Ian. I spent my formative years in Chelan in the summer. We lived out on the lake, which meant driving from Pat and Mike's, if you're familiar with when you come into Chelan down the hill, and you can go left down the South Shore or continue on Highway 97A into Chelan. We were just past that interchange. The thing I remember most is driving into Chelan with the windows down in the car, hitting Lakeside Park area, immediately the smell of Coppertone filled the air. Then on Saturday nights in Chelan, it was like apple blossom in Wenatchee. Cars bumper to bumper from the A&W drive-in to the park at the other end of town, live bands. I remember the song Summer in the City. Every time I hear that, it carries me back to Chelan in the summer with the cars bumper to bumper, the live bands, and especially the smell of Coppertone. Thank you, Ian.
I think we have time for one more, although everybody has spoken tonight. I do have one more question for Lloyd. This morning, Lloyd, I was listening to the radio, local Coho channel, and they were talking with the mayor of Wenatchee. They're talking about cruising and how cruising the avenue has become a thing again. The last time I remember cruising being a thing in Wenatchee was late 90s, right about then when the city of Wenatchee decided to put it into the cruising in the Apple Blossom Festival every year. The thoughts about cruising seem to have changed a little bit based on what I heard this morning, and they're being looked at as a new opportunity for people to get together and communicate, but still social distance. You spent your life as a school teacher, and I wonder what your thoughts are about kids out cruising right now. Is it dangerous? Is it just good fun? What are your thoughts?
Well, I got to admit, I hadn't heard that the cruising in Wenatchee was apparently live again. Is it a good idea? Well, let's put it this way. If you take a few hundred high school age kids and you let them out on the street at night, it's probably not a good idea. Disease or no disease, there's bound to be a certain amount of criminal activity, for lack of a better term. But what I would think about, I'm kind of at a loss because I don't know how many people are in the cruising. The classic Apple Blossom cruising, for those of you who have been around for a long time, was just horrifying. I mean, it was tens of thousands of people literally on the avenue. It could take 2 hours to go from the Wenatchee River Bridge up to what's now the Cellar Bridge easily. I kind of doubt that's happening because there aren't enough people in town to do it anymore. But I don't know. All in all, I doubt that much good is going to come out of having kids cruising. Table Topics Master. Oh.
Sorry about that. I got a phone call. Were you all done, Lloyd?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, my screen disappeared on me. At this point, Table Topics all wrapped up. I think we had some great conversations tonight. Eric, would you please take control of the meeting?
Thank you, Table Topics Master. I am very impressed, Ian, with 2 minutes warning, basically impromptu table topics. They were very well conducted questions with in-depth lead-in. So I'm very impressed. Very good. Let's, at this point, turn the meeting over to our general evaluator and see how the meeting went.
Well, first of all, I'll call on our team and then I'll conclude with the overall evaluation. So Ron, could you please give us your feedback on Lloyd's speech?
I can. Like Ian, I didn't look at the agenda too far ahead of time, but Lloyd was nice enough to go ahead and send me an email, let me know that I would be evaluating his speech. And of course, he sent me the evaluation form for it. Lloyd, as you began your speech, as thinking, I was kind of curious with folks in the room, not asking you to answer this, of course, because this is an evaluation of Lloyd's speech, but how many folks in the room attending this meeting have actually called 911? Because I have, heck, probably a half a dozen times over the years, or at least been involved with it. And I thought back the first time was when my dad and I found a body years ago when we called 911. It was a friend of his. I was 15. I was going to mow the guy's lawn, but he died, and so I didn't have to mow his lawn anymore. And I just remember hearing that conversation that my dad had with the 911 operator who wanted him to check pulse and go do CPR, but with the smell and the bugs, because it was August and it was 100 degrees, there was really no point in checking his pulse or doing CPR. But back to Lloyd's speech, it's definitely a good topic. And the point of that is I think it's something that everybody can certainly relate to. I really like how Lloyd was able to combine, of course, his personal experiences along with this topic. And it's unfortunate, Lloyd, to some degree that you had that many experiences, but nonetheless, it was something that the rest of the group can learn from. I thought in a Zoom setting that the overall presentation checked all the boxes for a good speech. The speech was clear, of course. That the eye contact with the camera was good. I mentioned earlier in these Zoom meetings, sometimes folks will look down quite a bit. Didn't see Lloyd doing that at all, at least that I saw during this. A decent vocal variety, decent use of pauses and such. Hand gestures, certainly good. Could have used the room a little bit more, Lloyd. I mean, come on, step it up a little bit. Definitely comfort with the topic. And looking around at a little bit at the audience, I think everybody was interested in this. I had one opportunity for improvement here. I think it would be just not the topic, but the overall. This particular speech was supposed to be researched. And yeah, you had some stats up front on how many 911 calls and a little bit about our local Rivercom. You drew primarily from your personal experiences versus researching the actual topic. I'm not suggesting that it wasn't good. It certainly was. Just think for a research topic, I think you'd have done a little bit more research. But for this particular speech, perhaps just choose something different for the actual speech style. But again, overall, good. It was interesting, and thanks for the opportunity to review it. Madam Evaluator.
Thank you very much. How did we do on time, Rob?
We did quite well this evening. So I'll start with Lloyd because he has several entries here. Lloyd's primary speech was 7 minutes and 38 seconds. Going to the table topics, Lloyd's first table topic was 1 minute 32. He then had a second bite at the apple, and he was 1 minute 17. Others who did table topics, Vicky was 54 seconds, Jackie was 1 minute 12, Ron was 2 minutes and 13 seconds, Pat was 1 minute 28, Joyce was 1 minute 17, Eric 2 minutes 9 seconds, Kathleen, 1:57. Christina, 1:36. And because I did not time myself, I had to jury rig it, and I came up with a time of 1:20. And Ron's evaluation was 3 minutes on the nose. Everyone did wonderfully. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Joyce, tell us how we did.
Oh, we did great as a group. Ian, 5 times. You said jury rig 5 times. Rob, 2. Pat, 1. Kathleen, 1. Lloyd, 1. Eric, 1. And I have a couple of sayings that I liked. Lloyd, calm and concise. I like that a lot. And I did not know about the cell phone not being as traceable for addresses as landlines. I learned something today. Jackie, I love your singing voice. Kathleen, BK, before kids, I love it. Rob, I know this was not during the table topics, but when you said second bite of the apple, I had to write that down. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. And Christina, how did we do?
We did pretty well tonight. Vicki, Jackie, and Ian were clean. Very good. Eric, 1 ah, 3 ands, 2 repetitions, and so, and I mean. Joyce, 2 ands. Rob, 4 ands, 1 well, 2 so's. Lloyd had 3 speaking parts tonight and thus gets a bit of grace. However, there were 10 uhs, 1 3 you knows, several repetitions. Pat, 2 ahs, 2 sentences started with so, 1 repetition. Ron, 4 ahs, 2 repetitions. And Kathleen, just 1 Thank you.
Thank you very much. Even though it's not the 21st of June, this whole meeting tonight was a good expression of summertime and the living is easy because it did flow. It was really very smooth. Nothing about it seemed to be jury rigged. The main speech, very informative. We learned stuff. The various table topics, what a variety of things they were. I think we get better and better each time. So overall, I believe it was a very good evening and congratulations to you all. And now I will turn it over to Ian, our president.
Thanks, Pat, and the rest of the evaluation team. At this point, Patricia, would you tally votes for the best speaker? The rest of the team, would you please send Pat your vote for who tonight's best speaker was? And
Ian,
again,
I will only do it if you call me Pat. My name says Patricia, but nobody ever calls me Patricia unless I'm in trouble. So please feel free to call me Pat.
noted, Pat. Please
Okay.
send Pat all of our votes tonight for whomever is your favorite speaker. And just when you do that to the chat thing, just make sure that you're selecting Pat instead of the everyone.
I selected Patricia.
While people are voting, could I share something?
Absolutely.
I was down picking up dinner at Bob's Classic one evening, Saturday evening. And I thought, boy, there's a lot of traffic out. What in the world is going on? And then I remembered the cruising thing. The people cruising were mostly my age or just within 10 years, one direction or the other. It's like the old cruising crew from the 70s is out there in their cars with their windows rolled down playing 70s music. We have some friends who are younger than us. Their kids are high school age, junior high age, and they packed up their kids and his mom, and they all went cruising. So it's not kids. If you want to go enjoy yourself on Saturday evening, feel free, because it's mostly people who look a lot like us.
Whoa.
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, Christina. Lloyd, do you have any comments from the VP Education perspective?
And the only thing I can think of, it kind of reflects what you said earlier about our meetings seem to be getting smoother and smoother on Zoom. And we're getting pretty good at this, I think. The weird thing is that internationally, I spend quite a bit of time looking around in the TI Facebook group every day to kind of catch on to what's going on. And there's kind of a division coming. A lot of clubs are doing exactly what we do and having online meetings, and people seem to be enjoying them. But other people have just decided they're just not going to participate until they can be live again, because it's just not real Toastmasters. And in my opinion, it's real Toastmasters. It's different Toastmasters, but nonetheless, it's real, it seems to me. And I think a bunch of those clubs who have decided just to go on hiatus are probably not going to come back, because Toastmasters gets to be kind of a habitual thing. And if you go several months without doing it, I don't think that's a wise thing for people to do. But in any event, the people are saying, well, it just can't be done. Sure it can. We're doing it every week. And it's not like we're big time experts or anything.
Thanks, Lloyd. Yeah, that's the topic that I think about all the time, and especially with regard to the electric toasters, and wondering if that club is going to be able to pull back out of the COVID-19 damage that's going to be done to it. Well, time will tell.
Yeah.
Rob, do you have?
Ian, you are always welcome to Cascade Speakeasy.
Thank you. Very much appreciated.
It's in all of our best interests, though, to have two good clubs in Wenatchee. And then, as we're finding out, like Matt Parsons, for example, can't come to the evening meetings, and that's probably true of a bunch of people who do the Speakeasy.
Okay.
Pat, do you have a count?
Yes, I do. And there were votes for 4 different people, but Lloyd is clearly the speaker of the evening. And I want you to know that my assistant this evening has been Chloe. And here she is. She's very helpful, and I could not have done it without her. So this is Chloe. And I think that I'll turn it back again to the president. And Chloe says good night to you all.
Thanks, Pat and Chloe. I don't have a whole lot more to say other than Pat bringing Chloe on reminded me of my 7-year-old son's final Zoom meeting of his school year, his final Zoom meeting of first grade, and all of the classmates shared something for show and tell. And it was so fun to watch kids show their pets, and you can tell that their love for those pets is just genuine and affectionate, and they're so proud of those pets. A lot of the pets weren't even live. Some of them were just stuffed animals. And
Well, I can't imagine my life without a dog. She brings a lot of joy to my life.
That's great. At this point, I'd like to close off tonight's meeting and thank, Eric, I see your hand up.
Good to see you, Kathleen. Welcome. Come again.
Thank you.
If any of you see any of our members of either club around, people who have not been coming to these meetings, try to persuade them to give it a try. I think they'd like it if they, just try it. I think it works pretty well.
Thanks, Lloyd. Meeting adjourned.
Thank
See you all next week.
Bye, everyone.
Have a great week.
See you, Ann.
Hi, guys.
Hi.